My name is Emily Parker, and this is the story of how my life turned upside down because of my sister, Kate. She wasn't just my sister, she was also my boss. Kate owned a law firm called Parker and Associates. She was smart, confident, and always in control. Everyone admired her, but, to me, she was more like a storm, unpredictable and destructive. It all started on a Monday morning. I was at work, busy finishing a report. Kate called me into her office, her voice sharp and cold. "Emily, come here," she said. I quickly walked to her office, my heart beating fast. Kate's office was big and fancy, with expensive furniture and a perfect view of the city. She sat behind her desk, looking at some papers. When I walked in, she didn't even look up. "Sit down," she said, her voice serious. I sat down nervously. "What's wrong, Kate?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes cold. "Do you know what you've done?" I shook my head. "No, I don't. Did I make a mistake?" Kate leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Yes, you did. The Peterson case. You missed an important detail in the contract. Because of that, we lost the client. Do you know how much money this firm has lost because of you?" I froze. I remembered the Peterson case. I worked hard on it, but I did make a small mistake. I tried to explain. "Kate, I'm really sorry. It was an accident. I'll fix it." She interrupted me. "Sorry isn't good enough, Emily. You've embarrassed me and this firm. I can't have someone like you working here anymore." I stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Kate smirked, her voice cold and final. "You're fired." My heart dropped. "Fired? You're firing me?" "Yes," she said. "Pack your things and leave by the end of the day. And don't think about calling Mom or Dad to change my mind. This is final." I wanted to fight back, to tell her how unfair this was, but I couldn't find the words. Kate had made up her mind, and there was no changing it. That evening, I left the office with a heavy heart. I had worked at the firm for years, and now I had nothing. For weeks, I tried to find another job, but no one would hire me. Kate was well known in the legal world, and news of my firing spread quickly. It felt like every door was closing in my face. To make things worse, I couldn't pay my bills. My rent was due, and I didn't know what to do. I felt stuck, like I was drowning. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see Kate standing there. She looked perfect as always, holding an umbrella to keep herself dry from the rain. She pushed past me into my apartment without asking. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to hide my frustration. Kate smirked and looked around. "Nice place. I hope you're taking care of it, because it's mine now." I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Kate handed me a piece of paper. It was a lease agreement. Her name was listed as the landlord. "I bought this building last month," she said. "So now you're renting from me. And since you've been out of work, I'm guessing you're behind on rent." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're my landlord now?" "Yes," Kate said, her smile cold and cruel. "And if you can't pay rent by the first of the month, I'll have no choice but to evict you. Business is business, Emily." She turned and walked toward the door. "Have a nice evening," she said before leaving. That night, I sat on my couch, holding the lease agreement in my hands. My sister wasn't just trying to control my job. Now she wanted to control my home, too. I felt angry, sad, and helpless all at once. But then I remembered something my late Aunt Margaret once told me. She always said, "Emily, you're stronger than you think. When the time comes, you'll see it." Aunt Margaret was the one person who believed in me when no one else did. When she passed away, she left me something I hadn't thought about in years. I didn't know it yet, but Aunt Margaret's gift was about to change everything. After Kate's visit, I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning with worry and anger. How could my own sister do this to me? She'd already fired me from the firm, and now she wanted to make me homeless too. I stared at the lease agreement, my hands shaking. It felt like I was trapped, but then I remembered Aunt Margaret. She wasn't just my aunt. She was my safe place, the only family member who truly cared about me. When I was little, Aunt Margaret would invite me to her cozy home every summer. She'd bake cookies, tell me stories, and remind me that I mattered. Emily, she used to say, never let anyone make you feel small. You have a big heart, and that's what makes you special. A memory of one summer day with her popped into my head. I was about 10 years old, sitting in her garden. She held my hands and looked me straight in the eye. One day, Emily, you'll face challenges that seem impossible. When that day comes, remember I believe in you. And when the time is right, you'll find something I've left for you, something to help you. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant, but now, sitting in my tiny apartment with nowhere else to turn, her words felt like a puzzle I needed to solve. The next morning, I called my cousin Sarah. She was Aunt Margaret's daughter and someone I hadn't talked to in a while. Sarah had moved away years ago, but we used to be close. "Sarah, it's Emily," I said nervously when she picked up the phone. "Emily! It's been so long! How are you?" Sarah sounded surprised, but happy to hear from me. I hesitated. "Not great, honestly. I've been having a tough time, and I've been thinking a lot about Aunt Margaret. I was wondering, did she leave anything behind for me when she passed away?" Sarah paused. "Actually, yes. Aunt Margaret always said she had a special plan for you. After she passed, she left you something in her will. I thought you already knew about it." My heart skipped a beat. "No, I didn't. What is it?" "She left you her house," Sarah said, her voice soft. "She said it was yours when you were ready. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me." "Her house? The one in Willow Creek?" "Yes," Sarah said. "It's been empty since she passed, but everything is still there. She wanted you to have it." Tears filled my eyes. Aunt Margaret had left me her house, a place I loved, a place where I always felt safe. That evening, I sat on my couch, staring at the keys Sarah had mailed to me. I couldn't believe it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. I didn't have to stay in this apartment, paying rent to Kate. I had somewhere else to go, but moving to Willow Creek wouldn't be easy. It was hours away, and I didn't have much money left. Plus, what would Kate say when she found out? She'd probably mock me, call me weak for running away. I shook my head, pushing the thought aside. This wasn't about Kate. This was about me. The next morning, I packed my bags. It wasn't much, just some clothes, a few personal items, and the framed photo of Aunt Margaret that always sat on my nightstand. As I looked around my small apartment one last time, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. This place had been my home, but it was also a reminder of everything I'd lost. It was time for a fresh start. The drive to Willow Creek was long but peaceful. As I got closer to Aunt Margaret's house, memories of my childhood summers with her filled my mind. The house was tucked away at the end of a quiet street, surrounded by trees and flowers. It was simple but beautiful, just like I remembered. When I pulled into the driveway, I felt a wave of emotions. Sadness that Aunt Margaret wasn't here to greet me, but also gratitude that she had thought of me even after she was gone. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell of lavender and wood polish hit me, and I smiled. It was like Aunt Margaret had never left. As I walked through the house, I noticed little things that brought back memories. A photo of us on the mantel, the quilt she used to wrap me in, and her favorite teapot still sitting on the kitchen counter. Then, in the living room, I saw a small box sitting on the coffee table. My name was written on it in Aunt Margaret's handwriting. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "Dear Emily," it began. "If you're reading this, it means you've found your way back to the place where you truly belong. This house is yours now, but it's more than just a home. It's a fresh start. Use it to build the life you deserve. And remember, you are stronger than you know. With all my love, Aunt Margaret." Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. Aunt Margaret had given me more than a house. She'd given me hope. But as I stood there holding her letter, I realized something important. This wasn't just a fresh start for me. It was also an opportunity to stand up to Kate and prove that I wasn't someone she could push around anymore. Aunt Margaret believed in me, and now it was time for me to believe in myself. Moving into Aunt Margaret's house was like stepping into a new chapter of my life. It was peaceful and quiet, far away from the chaos Kate had caused. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I spent the first few days unpacking and settling in. Every corner of the house was filled with memories of Aunt Margaret. Her kindness and wisdom seemed to echo in the walls, reminding me that I wasn't alone. But as much as I wanted to enjoy this fresh start, I couldn't stop thinking about Kate. She had always controlled me, making me feel small and powerless. Even now, I knew she wouldn't let me go so easily. Sure enough, just a few days after I moved in, my phone rang. It was Kate. "What do you want, Kate?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want my rent," she said coldly. "You're already late, Emily. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I took a deep breath. "I don't live there anymore." There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" "I moved out," I said. "You don't have to worry about me anymore." Kate laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh she used when she thought someone was being foolish. "Moved out? Where did you go? And how do you plan to survive without a job?" "That's none of your business," I said firmly. "Oh, it is my business," she snapped. "You're my sister, and you're acting like a spoiled child. Running away won't solve your problems, Emily. You'll come crawling back. You always do." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. "Goodbye, Kate," I said, and hung up the phone. That conversation lit a fire inside me. For years, I had let Kate walk all over me. I had let her control my life, but not anymore. I decided it was time to take control of my own future. The first step was finding a job. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Kate had connections everywhere, and she'd probably already ruined my reputation. But Aunt Margaret's house gave me a sense of security and strength I hadn't felt before. I started small, applying for jobs at local businesses in Willow Creek. One afternoon, I walked into a quaint little bookstore called the Reading Nook. It smelled like old books and coffee, and the owner, a kind woman named Mrs. Harper, greeted me with a warm smile. "Are you hiring?" I asked, nervously. Mrs. Harper looked me over and smiled. "As a matter of fact, we are." "Do you have any experience working in a bookstore?" "I don't," I admitted. But I'm a quick learner, and I love books. She nodded thoughtfully. Well, let's give it a try. Can you start tomorrow? I couldn't believe it. Really? Thank you so much. Mrs. Harper smiled again. You seem like a hard worker, Emily. Let's see how it goes. Working at the Reading Nook was nothing like working at Kate's law firm. The pace was slower, the people kinder, and the environment far less stressful. For the first time in years, I felt happy. But my happiness didn't last long. A week after I started my new job, Kate showed up at Aunt Margaret's house. I was outside watering the garden when I saw her car pull into the driveway. My stomach dropped. Kate stepped out, looking as polished as ever in her designer suit. She didn't even bother to smile. Nice place, she said, looking around. Is this where you've been hiding? I'm not hiding, I said, trying to stay calm. What are you doing here? I came to see for myself, she said, walking up to the porch. How can you afford this place, Emily? Did you win the lottery, or are you living off charity? Her words were like poison, but I refused to let them get to me. This house belongs to me, I said firmly. Kate raised an eyebrow. You? Since when? It was Aunt Margaret's, I said. She left it to me. For the first time, Kate looked surprised. She left it to you? Yes, I said, my voice steady. She wanted me to have a fresh start, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Kate's surprise quickly turned to anger. I can't believe this, she said, shaking her head. Aunt Margaret always had a soft spot for you. She should have left this house to someone who could actually take care of it. I crossed my arms. I'm taking care of it just fine, Kate, and for once, you have no say in what I do. Her face hardened. We'll see about that, she said before turning and walking back to her car. As she drove away, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I didn't know what Kate was planning, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her take away what Aunt Margaret had given me. The days after Kate's visit were tense. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done with me yet. Knowing my sister, she wouldn't let this go so easily. She always had to win, no matter what. I tried to focus on my new job at the Reading Nook. Mrs. Harper was kind and patient, and the work kept my mind busy. But in the quiet moments, my thoughts would drift back to Kate and what she might be planning. One evening, I got my answer. I was sitting on the couch, reading a book Aunt Margaret had loved, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Emily, this is Kate. You better call me now or you'll regret it. My stomach turned. I didn't want to call her, but I knew ignoring her would only make things worse. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. Emily, she said, her tone icy. You've really outdone yourself this time. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Don't play dumb, she snapped. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? I frowned. What are you talking about, Kate? I haven't done anything. Oh, really? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Then explain why the house you're living in is under investigation for unpaid property taxes. My heart sank. What? You heard me, she said. The county office contacted me because Aunt Margaret's taxes weren't paid before she passed. If you don't pay them soon, that house will be seized and you'll be out on the street. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. How could this be happening? Aunt Margaret had always been so careful with her finances. This didn't make sense. Are you sure? I asked, my voice shaking. Of course I'm sure, Kate said smugly. But don't worry, little sister. I'm willing to help you out. For a price. What kind of price? I asked warily. You sign the house over to me, she said. I'll take care of the taxes, and you won't have to worry about a thing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't about helping me. This was about taking what Aunt Margaret had left me. No, I said firmly. Kate laughed. Don't be stupid, Emily. You can't afford to pay the taxes, and you know it. If you don't let me help you, you'll lose the house. I'll figure it out, I said. Suit yourself, she said, her tone turning cold. But don't come crying to me when you're homeless. She hung up before I could say another word. I sat there in silence, the weight of her words pressing down on me. If what Kate said was true, I could lose Aunt Margaret's house, the one place that felt like home. But I couldn't let Kate win. Not this time. The next morning, I went to the county office to find out the truth. The clerk, a kind woman named Linda, looked up the property records for me. It looks like there is an unpaid tax balance, Linda said, frowning at her computer screen. But it's not as bad as it seems. The amount is manageable if you can pay it soon. I felt a flicker of hope. How much is it? Linda gave me the amount, and while it wasn't small, it wasn't impossible either. With a few months of saving and some careful budgeting, I could pay it off. Thank you, I said, relief washing over me. As I left the office, I felt a newfound determination. Kate had tried to scare me into giving up, but her plan had backfired. I wasn't going to let her take away what Aunt Margaret had left me. When I got home, I called Sarah. She was shocked to hear what Kate had done. Emily, you need to be careful, Sarah said. Kate has always been ambitious, but this is a new low. I know, I said, but I'm not going to let her win. Aunt Margaret believed in me, and I'm going to fight for what she left me. Sarah hesitated. There's something else you should know. Aunt Margaret mentioned once that she kept important documents in a safe in the house. Have you found it yet? No, I said, surprised. Where is it? She said it was hidden in the study, behind a painting, Sarah said. After we hung up, I went straight to the study. Sure enough, there is a painting of Aunt Margaret's favorite flowers hanging on the wall. When I moved it aside, I found a small safe embedded in the wall. My hands shook as I tried to open it. The combination was easy to guess. Margaret's birthday. Inside, I found a stack of papers, including the deed to the house and a letter addressed to me. I opened the letter, my heart pounding. Dear Emily, it began. If you're reading this, it means you found the safe. Inside, you'll find everything you need to protect what I've left you. Trust yourself, and don't let anyone take away what's rightfully yours. With love, Aunt Margaret. Tears filled my eyes as I read her words. She had thought of everything, even protecting me from someone like Kate. As I looked through the papers, I realized one thing. Kate might have a plan, but now, so did I. Finding the letter and documents in Aunt Margaret's safe gave me the strength I needed. She believed in me, even when I doubted myself. That safe wasn't just a collection of papers. It was a shield against Kate's schemes. The next day, I carefully reviewed everything inside the safe. Aunt Margaret had detailed instructions for handling the house, including contacts for her lawyer and accountant. Among the documents, there was a note attached to a business card. Call Mr. Harris, the note read. He will help you if needed. I dialed the number, and within minutes, I was speaking to Mr. Harris, a kind and confident attorney. Emily, Your aunt spoke highly of you, Mr. Harris said. How can I assist you? I explained everything. Kate's threats, the unpaid taxes, and my concerns about her trying to take the house. Mr. Harris listened patiently before responding. Your aunt was very thorough, he said. She made sure the house was legally protected under your name. As long as you follow the instructions she left and pay the taxes on time, Kate has no claim to it. His words were a relief, but I still felt uneasy. What if Kate tries something else? She's always one step ahead. That's where I come in, Mr. Harris assured me. If she attempts anything, we'll be ready. I'll send you a detailed plan to protect your rights. For the first time, I felt like I had someone in my corner. Over the next few weeks, I focused on saving money for the taxes. My job at the reading nook was a blessing. Mrs. Harper even offered me extra hours, which I gladly accepted. But Kate wasn't done. One evening, I came home to find a notice pinned to the front door. It was a letter from Kate's law firm claiming that the house was part of the Parker family estate and demanding I vacate the property immediately. I felt a surge of anger. How dare she? She knew the house was legally mine. This was just another scare tactic. I called Mr. Harris right away. Don't worry, Emily, he said after reading the letter. This is a baseless claim. I'll handle it. True to his word, Mr. Harris sent a formal response to Kate's firm, warning them to cease their harassment. It was a small victory, but it felt good to stand up to her. A few days later, Sarah came to visit. She brought coffee and a box of pastries, but more importantly, she brought news. Kate is furious, Sarah said, sitting across from me in the cozy living room. She's been complaining to everyone at the firm about how ungrateful you are. I rolled my eyes. Of course she is. She can't stand not being in control. She's planning something big, Sarah warned. I overheard her talking about hiring a private investigator to dig up dirt on you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why would she go that far? Because she's losing, Sarah said simply. She's used to getting her way, and you standing up to her is driving her crazy. Hearing this only strengthened my resolve. Kate might have resources, but I had something she didn't. Aunt Margaret's foresight and support. The final straw came a week later. I received an invitation to a family meeting at Kate's house. It was unusual, to say the least. Our family never held meetings, and the tone of the invitation was suspiciously formal. I debated whether or not to go. Part of me wanted to stay far away from Kate and her manipulations, but another part of me knew I needed to face her head on. When the day arrived, I dressed carefully, professional but approachable. I didn't want Kate to see any sign of weakness. As I walked into her grand living room, I was greeted by the sight of my parents, Kate, and a few of her colleagues from the firm. Kate was seated at the head of the table, looking smug as ever. "Thank you for coming, Emily," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "What's this about, Kate?" I asked, taking a seat. "We're here to discuss the future of the Parker family estate," she said, glancing at her colleagues. "Specifically, the house you're living in." I folded my arms. "The house Aunt Margaret left me?" Kate's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Yes, that one. As you know, the house has significant sentimental and financial value. It's only fair that it remains part of the family estate." I couldn't believe her audacity. "Aunt Margaret didn't leave it to the family estate, Kate. She left it to me." "That's up for debate," she said smoothly. "My legal team has found some discrepancies in the paperwork." I glanced at Mr. Harris, who was sitting quietly beside me. He gave me a reassuring nod. Actually, I said, pulling out the deed and Aunt Margaret's letter, there's nothing to debate. This house was legally transferred to me, and I have the documents to prove it. Kate's face turned red, but she quickly composed herself. We'll see about that. I looked her straight in the eye. We already have, Kate. You can't intimidate me anymore. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. That meeting marked a turning point. Kate had thrown everything she could at me, but I wasn't backing down. With Mr. Harris's help and Aunt Margaret's guidance, I was finally standing up for myself. As I left Kate's house that evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I believed I could win. The family meeting was the last straw for me. Kate had tried everything: intimidation, lies, and even legal threats. But she couldn't break me. I had something she didn't: the truth and Aunt Margaret's unwavering support, even from beyond the grave. After the meeting, Kate stayed quiet for a while. I thought maybe she was finally giving up, but deep down, I knew her silence wouldn't last. She was planning something. I just didn't know what. One evening, while I was organizing some of Aunt Margaret's old books, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find my parents standing there, looking uneasy. "Emily, can we come in?" my dad asked. I stepped aside, unsure of what to expect. They sat down in the living room, their faces serious. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting across from them. My mom spoke first. "Kate told us about the house. She said you're refusing to let it be part of the family estate." I felt my heart sink. "Mom, the house isn't part of the estate. Aunt Margaret left it to me. She made that very clear. She also said you've been difficult," Dad added hesitantly, "that you're causing trouble for the family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're taking her side? After everything she's done to me?" My mom sighed. "It's not about sides, Emily. It's about the family staying united." "United?" I said, my voice shaking. "Kate has been bullying me for years. She fired me, demanded rent for a house that's legally mine, and now she's lying to you about me. How is that being united?" My dad looked uncomfortable. "Emily, we're just trying to keep the peace." I realized then that they would never stand up to Kate. She had always been their favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong. It hurt, but I couldn't let their favoritism stop me from fighting for what was right. The next day, I met with Mr. Harris to finalize the legal protections for the house. We filed all the necessary paperwork to ensure Kate couldn't make any more claims against it. It was a long and exhausting process, but when it was done, I felt a sense of relief. That relief didn't last long. A few weeks later, I received an invitation to Kate's wedding. It was a grand affair, hosted at a luxurious venue with hundreds of guests. I had no intention of going, but then I thought about everything Kate had done. This was my chance to show her that she couldn't intimidate me anymore. The day of the wedding arrived, and I dressed carefully, a simple but elegant dress that Aunt Margaret had given me years ago. When I arrived at the venue, I could feel the tension in the air. Kate spotted me from across the room and immediately came over. "Emily," she said with a forced smile, "I'm surprised you came." "Why wouldn't I?" I replied, matching her fake politeness. "It's a family event, after all." Her smile faltered for a moment before she recovered. "Well, enjoy yourself, and try not to cause any drama." I smiled back. "You don't have to worry about me, Kate." As the ceremony began, I sat quietly watching Kate bask in the attention. She looked radiant, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of sadness. She had spent her entire life trying to control everything and everyone around her, but it had cost her something priceless: genuine love and respect. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the reception hall. I was sitting at a table, chatting with Sarah, when Kate suddenly approached with her new husband. "Emily," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "have you decided to apologize for the trouble you've caused?" I stood up, my heart pounding. "Apologize? For what, Kate? For standing up to you? For refusing to let you bully me anymore?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on us. Kate's face turned red. "This isn't the time or place for this," she hissed. "You brought it up," I said calmly. "So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you've lied to Mom and Dad, tried to steal my house, and treated me like I'm less than you my entire life." Her new husband looked at her, confused. "Is this true?" Kate stammered. "It's not like that. She's exaggerating." I turned to the crowd. "I have the documents to prove everything. Aunt Margaret left the house to me because she knew how Kate would act. She wanted me to have a chance to live my life without Kate's interference." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Kate's carefully crafted image was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. After that day, Kate's power over me was gone. She stopped trying to take the house and avoided me at family gatherings. It wasn't the outcome I had expected, but it was freeing. With the house secure and Kate out of my life, I finally had the space to focus on my own happiness. I continued working at the Reading Nook, eventually saving enough money to open my own small bookstore, a dream Aunt Margaret had always encouraged. Looking back, I realized that standing up to Kate wasn't just about the house. It was about reclaiming my life and my sense of self-worth. And for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace.